The FBI agent laughed when I said my mom was a Navy SEAL, calling me a delusional teenager making up stories. But when those combat boots echoed down that hallway, his smirk disappeared faster than his confidence. I'm Celeste Morrison, and I'm 17 years old. For the past 8 months, I've been living with my dad in Virginia Beach while my mom has been deployed somewhere I'm not allowed to know about. People always assume military kids are lying when we talk about what our parents really do. They think we're trying to sound cool or get attention. Trust me, there's nothing cool about wondering if your mom is coming home alive. My dad is retired Marine Captain Rex Morrison. He's the one who taught me to stand up for myself and never back down from the truth, even when people don't want to believe it. My mom is Commander Vivienne Morrison, and she's been a Navy SEAL for 12 years. She's saved lives in places most people can't even pronounce, and she's earned every scar and medal that proves it. Living in a military town like Virginia Beach, you'd think people would understand what real service looks like. You'd be wrong. Even here, people have their ideas about who gets to be a hero and what heroes are supposed to look like. When you're a teenage girl trying to explain that your mom jumps out of helicopters and kicks down doors in foreign countries, adults start giving you that look. The one that says they think you're confused or lying or both. That morning started like any other Tuesday at Ocean View High School. I was sitting in AP History, taking notes on World War II, when Principal Watson knocked on the classroom door. She had that serious expression that meant someone was either in big trouble or something serious was happening. When she called my name and asked me to come to her office, my stomach dropped. In military families, unexpected calls to the principal's office can mean a lot of different things, and most of them aren't good. I grabbed my backpack and followed her down the hallway, my mind racing through possibilities. Had something happened to my mom? Was my dad okay? Did I forget to turn in an assignment? Principal Watson wasn't giving me any clues, just walking with that brisk, official pace that adults use when they're trying to stay professional about something that's probably going to upset you. When we reached her office, I saw a man in a dark suit sitting in one of the chairs across from her desk. He had that federal agent look that you see in movies, except less polished and more tired. His badge was clipped to his belt, and he was holding a tablet and a thick manila folder. The nameplate on Principal Watson's desk had been moved to make room for his coffee cup, which he'd apparently helped himself to without asking. "Celeste, this is FBI Agent Dale Kruger," Principal Watson said, gesturing for me to sit in the chair next to the agent. "He needs to ask you some questions about threats that have been made against military families in the area." Agent Kruger looked up from his tablet and gave me the kind of smile adults use when they're trying to seem friendly, but don't actually care about being nice. He was probably in his mid-40s, with graying hair and the kind of confidence that comes from thinking you're always the smartest person in the room. His handshake was firm in that way that's supposed to intimidate teenagers, and his eyes were already scanning me like he was trying to figure out what category to put me in. "Miss Morrison," he said, settling back into his chair like he owned the place. "This shouldn't take long. I just need to verify some information about your family's military background and ask if you've noticed anything unusual lately." I should have known right then that this wasn't going to go well. The first sign that this wasn't going to be a normal conversation came when Agent Kruger opened his folder and started reading from it like I wasn't sitting right there. He had this way of flipping through pages that made it seem like he'd already made up his mind about whatever he was going to find. "According to your school records, you're Celeste Morrison, age 17, currently living with your father while your mother is deployed overseas." He looked up at me over his reading glasses. "Your file indicates some behavioral issues, a few arguments with teachers, some missed assignments during deployment periods." I felt my jaw clench. Those behavioral issues were me having panic attacks when teachers announced pop quizzes on days when we hadn't heard from my mom in weeks. Those missed assignments were me staying up all night researching news from whatever region I thought she might be in, trying to figure out if she was safe. "I don't have behavioral issues, sir. I have a mom who serves her country, and sometimes that's hard to deal with." Agent Kruger made a note on his tablet. And how would you describe your relationship with your parents? Any tensions at home, arguments about rules or expectations?" "No, sir. My dad and I get along fine. We're both just worried about my mom coming home safe." "Right." He didn't look like he believed me. "And what exactly does your mother do in the military, Miss Morrison? I see here that she's listed as Navy personnel, but the specific job description seems to be classified." This was the moment I'd been dreading since I sat down. I'd had this conversation 100 times before with teachers, guidance counselors, other parents, and even some military families who thought they knew better. Everyone always had the same reaction when I told them the truth about my mom. "She's a Navy SEAL, sir." The silence that followed was exactly what I expected. Agent Kruger stopped writing and looked up at me with that expression adults get when they think a kid is trying to pull one over on them. He set his pen down deliberately and leaned back in his chair. "A Navy SEAL," he repeated, and I could already hear the disbelief in his voice. "Yes, sir, she's been a SEAL for 12 years. Agent Kruger actually chuckled. It started as a small laugh, but then he looked over at Principal Watson like they were sharing some kind of joke about how ridiculous teenagers could be. "Right, and I suppose your dad's a Green Beret, and your brother's in Delta Force too." "I don't have a brother, sir, and my dad was a Marine captain before he retired." The chuckling stopped being friendly and started being mean. "Miss Morrison, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've interviewed thousands of military families, and I know when kids are spinning tailies to make themselves seem more important than they are." I felt my cheeks burning with anger and embarrassment. Principal Watson shifted uncomfortably in her chair, but she didn't say anything to defend me. She just sat there watching this federal agent mock me for telling the truth about my own family. "I'm not making anything up, sir. My mom is Commander Vivienne Morrison, and she's currently deployed with her SEAL team." "Commander," Agent Kruger repeated, like the word tasted funny in his mouth. "So now she's not just a SEAL, she's a high-ranking SEAL. This story keeps getting better." I could feel tears starting to form behind my eyes, and that made me even angrier. I didn't want to cry in front of this man who was treating me like I was some attention-seeking liar. I wanted to be strong like my mom taught me, but it was hard when an adult with a badge and a gun was essentially calling me delusional. "She earned her rank, sir. She served 3 combat deployments and earned a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star." Agent Kruger actually laughed out loud at that. "A Purple Heart? Miss Morrison, do you even know what a Purple Heart is? It's awarded to service members who are wounded or killed in action against an enemy. Women aren't in frontline combat roles that would qualify for that kind of medal." "That's not true, sir. Women have been serving in combat roles for years now, and my mom has the scars to prove she's earned everything she's been awarded." "Listen, sweetheart," Agent Kruger said, and the condescending tone in his voice made my skin crawl. "I understand that having a parent deployed can be stressful. Sometimes kids create fantasy stories to cope with the uncertainty and fear. There's no shame in that, but we need to deal with reality here." The word fantasy hit me like a slap across the face. This wasn't a fantasy. This was my life. This was my mom risking everything to serve her country while people like Agent Kruger sat in comfortable offices and questioned whether women like her even existed. Agent Kruger wasn't done humiliating me. He leaned forward in his chair with that smug expression that adults get when they think they've caught a teenager in a lie, and I knew this was about to get worse. "Miss Morrison, let me explain something to you about the real military. Navy SEALs are elite warriors who undergo some of the most brutal training in the world. They're deployed to the most dangerous places on Earth to complete missions that most people couldn't even imagine. Does that sound like something your mom would be doing?" "Yes, sir, it does, because that's exactly what she does." He shook his head like I was a child who insisted Santa Claus was real. "These aren't desk jobs, sweetheart. These aren't supply clerks or administrative assistants. These are people who jump out of helicopters in the middle of the night and engage in direct combat with enemy forces." "I know what SEALs do, sir. My mom has taught me about her job since I was old enough to understand why she had to leave for months at a time." "Really?" Agent Kruger opened his folder again and pulled out a photograph. "So you're telling me that your mother, this woman who you claim is a Navy SEAL, has told you about classified military operations?" The trap in his question was obvious, and it made my stomach twist. "No, sir. She's never told me anything classified. She just explained why her job is dangerous and why she has to be away so much." "But you just said she taught you about her job. Which is it, Miss Morrison? Does she share details about her military service, or doesn't she?" I felt like I was suffocating. Every answer I gave seemed to make him more convinced that I was lying. Principal Watson was still just sitting there, letting this federal agent twist my words and make me feel like a criminal for talking about my own mother. She's told me general things about what SEALs do, sir. Nothing classified or specific to her missions. General things, he repeated, writing something else on his tablet. Like what? Give me an example of these general things your SEAL mother has taught you. She's taught me that SEALs train constantly to stay in peak physical condition. She's taught me that they have to be ready to deploy anywhere in the world on short notice. She's taught me that they work in small teams and depend on each other to stay alive. Agent Kruger was nodding along like he was listening, but his expression told a different story. That's all information you could get from watching a movie or reading Wikipedia, Miss Morrison. None of that proves your mother is actually a SEAL. Why would I lie about this? The question came out louder than I intended, and I could hear the desperation in my own voice. What would I gain from making this up? Attention, sympathy, a way to make yourself seem special in a school full of military kids whose parents have normal jobs. He set his tablet down and looked directly at me. Listen, I understand that having a deployed parent is difficult. I understand that you might feel like you need to compete with other kids whose parents have impressive military careers. But lying about your mother's service record isn't going to help anyone. The word lying felt like a physical blow. I'd been called a lot of things in my 17 years, but no one had ever called me a liar about something this important. I am not lying, sir. My mother is Commander Vivienne Morrison, and she is a Navy SEAL. No, she's not. His voice was flat and final, like he was stating an obvious fact. Women aren't Navy SEALs, Miss Morrison. They're not built for that kind of work, and they're not allowed in those positions. That's not true anymore, sir. The military opened combat roles to women years ago. Combat roles, yes, some combat roles, but not Navy SEALs. That's still an all-male unit, and it probably always will be. I stared at him in complete disbelief. This was a federal agent, someone who was supposed to be informed about current military policies, and he was sitting here telling me that women couldn't be SEALs when my own mother was living proof that he was wrong. Sir, with all due respect, you're incorrect about that. Women have been allowed to attempt SEAL training since 2016. Agent Kruger's face darkened. Miss Morrison, I think I know a little more about military policy than a 17-year-old girl who's clearly been watching too many action movies. And I think I know more about my own mother than you do. The silence that followed was thick with tension. Agent Kruger was staring at me like I'd just committed some kind of crime by disagreeing with him. Principal Watson looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. Miss Morrison, Agent Kruger said slowly, I'm going to ask you one more time to stop this fantasy and tell me the truth about your mother's actual job in the Navy. I have been telling you the truth, sir. My mother is a Navy SEAL, and if you don't believe me, you can call the Pentagon and verify it yourself. Something shifted inside me in that moment. Maybe it was the way Agent Kruger was looking at me like I was some delusional kid who needed psychiatric help. Maybe it was the way Principal Watson was just sitting there letting this happen. Or maybe it was the fact that after 8 months of missing my mom and worrying about her safety, I was tired of people acting like she didn't exist. I pulled my phone out of my backpack, and Agent Kruger immediately held up his hand. Miss Morrison, put that away. We're in the middle of an official interview. I'm sending my mom a text, I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. You want proof that she's a Navy SEAL? Fine. She gets back from deployment today and she can be here in 20 minutes. Agent Kruger's expression changed slightly. For just a second, I saw something that might have been uncertainty flicker across his face. But then his skeptical smirk came back full force. Oh, this should be interesting. Let me guess, your mom is going to show up in her Navy SEAL costume and tell me all about her top-secret missions. I ignored him and typed out a message I'd never sent before. Mom, emergency at school. FBI agent questioning me about threats against military families. He doesn't believe you're a SEAL and is treating me like I'm lying. Need you here now. I showed him the screen before hitting send. Her name is Commander Vivienne Morrison. She's currently assigned to SEAL Team 8 out of Norfolk. She's been deployed to Syria for the past 8 months as part of a joint counterterrorism operation. Miss Morrison, you cannot share classified information in an official interview, Agent Kruger said, but his voice sounded less confident than it had a few minutes ago. That's not classified information, sir. SEAL Team 8's location and general mission parameters are public knowledge. What's classified is the specific operations they conduct and the intelligence they gather. I hit send on the text message and put my phone on Principal Watson's desk where Agent Kruger could see it. The screen lit up almost immediately with my mom's response. On my way, 20 minutes. Agent Kruger stared at the phone, then back at me. So your mother is going to drop everything and rush to your school because you sent her a text message claiming there's an emergency. My mother takes threats against military families seriously, sir. Especially when those threats involve her daughter being interrogated by federal agents who refuse to verify her service record before making accusations. I'm not making accusations, Miss Morrison. I'm trying to get you to stop telling stories and deal with reality. This is reality, sir. I leaned forward in my chair, feeling more confident than I had since this whole conversation started. My mom is going to walk through that door in exactly 19 minutes, and she's going to be wearing her dress blues because she's coming straight from a ceremony at Norfolk Naval Base. She'll have her trident pin on her uniform, along with her Purple Heart, Bronze Star, and 3 combat action ribbons. Agent Kruger was trying to maintain his skeptical expression, but I could see doubt creeping into his eyes. His certainty was starting to crack, and we both knew it. And when she gets here, I continued, you're going to have to explain to a decorated Navy SEAL why you spent 45 minutes calling her teenage daughter a liar instead of making one phone call to verify her service record. Miss Morrison, if you're trying to intimidate me, it's not going to work. I've been doing this job long enough to know when kids are bluffing. I'm not bluffing, sir, and I'm not intimidating you. I'm just telling you what's going to happen when my mom gets here. The silence that followed was different from the earlier silences in this conversation. This one was tense with anticipation rather than mockery. Agent Kruger kept glancing at my phone on the desk, watching the minutes tick by. Principal Watson was sitting perfectly still, like she was afraid to move. 18 minutes, I said quietly, checking the time on my phone. Agent Kruger cleared his throat and shuffled through his papers, but he wasn't really reading them anymore. He was thinking, and I could practically see the wheels turning in his head. What if this kid wasn't lying? What if he just spent the better part of an hour humiliating the daughter of an actual Navy SEAL? What would that mean for his career? 17 minutes, I said, and this time Agent Kruger didn't have a comeback ready. For the first time since this interview started, I felt like I had the upper hand. My mom was coming, and Agent Kruger was finally beginning to understand that maybe, just maybe, he'd made a serious mistake. At exactly 21 minutes after I sent that text, we heard them coming. Heavy combat boots on linoleum floors, moving with the kind of precision that only comes from years of military training. The sound echoed down the hallway like thunder, and I watched Agent Kruger's face go completely white. The footsteps stopped right outside Principal Watson's office door. There was a brief knock, professional and controlled, and then the door opened. My mom walked in first, and I had never been more proud to see her in my entire life. Commander Vivienne Morrison stood 5 feet 6 inches tall, but she seemed to fill the entire room with her presence. She was wearing her dress blue uniform, just like I'd predicted, and every ribbon and medal on her chest told a story of service and sacrifice that Agent Kruger couldn't begin to understand. Her trident pin caught the fluorescent light as she stepped into the room, followed by 3 other SEALs in identical uniforms. I recognized Petty Officer Hayes and Chief Rodriguez from family barbecues, but the 3rd SEAL was someone I'd never met. They all had that same quiet intensity that came from people who'd seen real combat and lived to talk about it. Agent Kruger, my mom said, and her voice carried the kind of authority that made everyone in the room sit up straighter. I understand you've been questioning my daughter's credibility regarding my military service. Agent Kruger tried to stand up, but his legs seemed unsteady. His earlier confidence had completely evaporated, replaced by the dawning realization that he'd made a catastrophic error in judgment. Commander Morrison, I had no way of knowing that you were actually a Navy SEAL. Your daughter's claims seemed, well, unusual for someone her age. Unusual? My mom's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath it. Agent Kruger, what exactly did you find unusual about my daughter telling you the truth about her mother's military service? Well, I mean, women in Navy SEAL units are still relatively uncommon, and I thought perhaps she was confused about your actual role in the Navy. The other SEALs hadn't said a word, but their presence spoke volumes. Chief Rodriguez had his arms crossed, and Petty Officer Hayes was staring at Agent Kruger with the kind of look that made grown men reconsider their life choices. "Agent Kruger," my mom continued, "did you attempt to verify my service record before accusing my daughter of fabricating stories?" "I was planning to verify the information after completing the interview process." "So you decided to call my daughter a liar first and check the facts later?" Agent Kruger's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He looked like a fish gasping for air, and I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Mom," I said quietly, "he told me that women can't be Navy SEALs. He said I was delusional and needed psychiatric evaluation for making up fantasy stories." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. My mom turned her full attention to Agent Kruger, and I saw him actually take a step backward. "Agent Kruger, you told my 17-year-old daughter that she needed psychiatric evaluation because she accurately described her mother's military service." "Commander Morrison, I can see now that there was a misunderstanding. Perhaps we got off on the wrong foot." "There was no misunderstanding, Agent Kruger. You made assumptions based on your own prejudices, and when my daughter provided you with factual information, you chose to mock her instead of doing your job." Chief Rodriguez finally spoke up. "Commander, maybe we should discuss this with Agent Kruger's supervisor." Agent Kruger looked like he might faint. "That won't be necessary. I sincerely apologize for any confusion during the interview process." "Confusion?" My mom's voice was dangerously quiet. "Agent Kruger, there was no confusion here. There was only your failure to treat my daughter with the respect she deserved and your failure to verify information before making accusations." The silence that followed was absolute. Agent Kruger stood there looking like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole, while my mom and her teammates waited for an explanation that would never come. Agent Kruger tried to salvage the situation with a string of apologies that sounded as hollow as they were desperate. "Commander Morrison, I want to personally apologize for the misunderstanding. I should have verified your service record before conducting the interview. I hope you can understand that I was simply being thorough in my investigation." My mom cut him off with a look that could have stopped a charging bull. "Agent Kruger, the damage has already been done. My daughter will never forget how you made her feel today, and neither will I. She came to school this morning as a 17-year-old girl who was proud of her mother's service, and you turned her into a victim of your ignorance and prejudice." She pulled out her phone and took a picture of his business card, which was still sitting on Principal Watson's desk. "I'll be filing a formal complaint with your supervising agent today. This conversation will be documented, and your conduct will be reviewed by people who understand what professional standards look like." Agent Kruger's face went from pale to green. "Commander, I don't think that's necessary. This was simply a case of miscommunication." "No, Agent Kruger, this wasn't miscommunication. This was you deciding that a teenage girl was lying because her truth didn't fit your expectations. This was you mocking a military family instead of doing your job." Chief Rodriguez stepped forward slightly, and his presence made Agent Kruger take another step back. "Ma'am, should we escort Agent Kruger to his vehicle?" For a moment I thought Agent Kruger might actually run, but my mom held up her hand and Chief Rodriguez stepped back. "That won't be necessary, Chief. Agent Kruger can see himself out. I'm sure he has some phone calls to make to his supervisors." Agent Kruger gathered his papers with shaking hands, stuffing them into his folder without any of the organization he'd shown earlier. "Again, Commander Morrison, I sincerely apologize for any offense caused during today's interview." "Agent Kruger," my mom said as he reached the door, "the next time you interview a military family, I suggest you remember that heroes come in all forms. Your assumptions about what a Navy SEAL looks like almost cost you your career today." After he left, the room felt lighter somehow. Principal Watson finally found her voice and apologized profusely to both my mom and me. The other SEALs shook my hand and told me they were proud of how I'd handled myself under pressure. As we walked toward the parking lot, my mom put her arm around my shoulders. "I'm sorry I wasn't here to protect you from that, Celeste. But I'm proud of how you stood your ground and didn't let him intimidate you into backing down from the truth." "Mom, how did you get here so fast? And why were Chief Rodriguez and the others with you?" She smiled, and for the first time all day, I saw my mom instead of Commander Morrison. "We were already on our way to the school for a surprise assembly about military families and the sacrifices they make. The principal had arranged it weeks ago as part of Veterans Appreciation Week. So you were coming here anyway? We were. Turns out we showed up exactly when we were needed most. Walking across that parking lot with my mom and her teammates, I realized something important. I'd spent so much time trying to convince other people that my family was worth believing in that I'd forgotten the most important thing. We didn't need anyone else's validation. My mom's service was real whether Agent Kruger believed it or not. Her sacrifices were meaningful whether other people understood them or not. Agent Kruger had learned that assumptions can destroy a career faster than facts can build one. I'd learned that sometimes the best way to prove someone wrong is to let them prove themselves wrong. And my mom had proven once again that real strength isn't about intimidating people or raising your voice. It's about standing up for what's right with quiet confidence and unwavering dignity. Some battles are worth fighting, and family is always worth defending.